Good afternoon, listening audience, or good evening, wherever you are in this country or the rest of the world. We had a lot of wonderful reactions to the videos that we posted on the life of Metropolitan Philip. And I think that we will continue to talk about Metropolitan Philip and other hierarchs and tell stories. I want to do some storytelling about our archdiocese and its history. Much of what you can find in my book, Ancient Church on New Shores, Antioch in North America. This is not a commercial for my book, by the way, which is at the Antiochian Village bookstore. But it does contain, both in the footnotes and the documents, the best history of the evolution of our church in North America. And I take great pride in having written that book over a 10-year period. Anyway, Lynn, you were going to begin.
Yeah, I wanted to say, first of all, let me say I'm not trying to be mysterious. I had some eye surgery, and that's the reason for the sunglasses. But
the real reason she doesn't want to look at me.
I don't have to. One of the things that we were talking about was, as Father mentioned, telling some more stories about the history of the Archdiocese and some of the fun times and some of the obstacles that had to be gotten over. And when he was talking about Metropolitan Philip of blessed memory, from a woman's point of view, Metropolitan Philip was not a typical Middle Eastern man. There is nothing that he enjoyed more than an intellectual salon, and women were among his good friends and were treated as equals. There was no, you're the galley slave, and as a matter of fact, when we would have lunch at his house, he would serve us often. Lunch or dinner at his house, he would serve us. Get up from the table and get something for us. But he didn't look at women in the same way that most Middle Easterners do, most Middle Eastern men do. Now, I'm painting it with a very broad brush, but the influence of Islam, of the radical Islamic movement, has made it a place for women that didn't exist even in Muhammad's day. And Metropolitan Philip was very, very much for women's rights and was proud of the achievement of any women who were active in the Archdiocese or who were active in the church in any way. He was very proud of that, and I just thought that I would mention that about him.
he was so proud of his nieces as they achieved great things. The Antiochian women, he started the first teen oratorical contest, and the first winner was Janice Nicola Saba. And in general, and he appointed women to the Archdiocese Board. He did not have any old country thoughts about the role of women in the church. It happened that Lynn and I eloped, and he was the one to do our wedding. And he wasn't here that long.
You have to understand that, excuse me for interrupting, that most people whose first language is Arabic have trouble with the pronunciation of the letter P. It always comes out B. That's why the pastor of the church, they don't call it, they don't say pastor, because it comes out starting with the B. Anyway, go ahead. Tell the story.
Well, Lynn insisted that she wanted Father Philip to marry us. That was her hero as a teenager in Ohio. He was the priest in Cleveland. She's from Canton, Ohio. And we had left school surreptitiously, and I was not feeling that well, and something told me we have to do this thing. So we call him up and we say, Father Philip, where do you live? He says, I live on Burrow Road. Pearl or Burrow? Yeah, Burrow. See now, where do you live? Pearl or Burrow? Burrow.
He spelled it for us.
And then he spelled it for us.
B.
How did he spell it?
Bearl.
B. So we were looking for Burrow Road. And we drove and drove and drove and drove and drove and drove till we finally, I don't know how we ever ended up at his house. It's a miracle.
Well, we finally figured out that we were both very young, and both of us grew up in homes where grandparents spoke partial Arabic and not a lot of English, and there was that accent again. There was that trouble with the letter B again. So we both figured out after a while that it had to be a P, that we were looking for Pearl Road. But we were several hours late getting to his home.
But when he was elected Archbishop of North America, there really was both incredible excitement among the young clergy and the youth of this archdiocese, but also there was some not so joyful, happy sentiments among the elders who thought, who's this upstart to become the Archbishop of North America? And his early years were fraught with some difficulty in getting things done that he wanted to get done.
Vis-a-vis Damascus, and isn't that what you're talking about?
No,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no.
Say that.
He was in a constant. I don't want to say battle, because I don't think there was anything really fractious about it. I think that his ideas were new, his ideas were young, and he was against tremendous odds with the seat of the church being in Damascus at the time, the seat of Antioch being located in the Patriarchate in Damascus, and everything he wanted to do, every change he wanted to make, he had to fight, and he would take a coterie of priests with him to the synod meetings. I I think that was more than anything for moral support for him, because the clergy did adore him. The young clergy did adore him, and looked upon him with a lot of hope and optimism for the future, and rightly so. I mean, it was well placed. It was well placed thoughts.
Well, you know, he was fighting the old order, so to speak, and he wanted to see a renaissance in the Patriarchate of Antioch, and there was this period in which young bishops were consecrated, that Metropolitans, that is, that did change the landscape of the Church of Antioch, but also in this country too. There was, let us say, non-recognition of his total episcopal authority by the elders. And one of the most dramatic moments that happened was in 1970, when he had asked a group of us to draft a new constitution for the archdiocese, because during the Miami Convention in 1968, he took the word Syrian from the nomenclature for the name of the it was called the Syrian Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese in North America. Well, that title was the same title as the Syriac Church, and he wanted to make it, and he felt, and rightly so, that Antioch represents a universal term, not a geographical spot on the map. Antioch, the great city of Antioch, where Peter and Paul established the church, where Paul was converted on the road to Damascus. That whole area to him was sacrosanct. And Antioch did not mean a spot. It meant a universal evangelical idea. So he brought it to the floor, and the word Syrian was automatically withdrawn by almost unanimous consent of the body at the General Assembly at the convention in Miami in 1968. Upon completion of that convention, he set up a committee to do a new constitution that would reflect the realities of the church in America today, and of the Antiochian Archdiocese today, and of the name of the Archdiocese, to let it be known that this was the Antiochian Archdiocese, that we've inherited the legacy of Antioch in the New World. And in any case of a few of us that were asked to help draft this constitution, in one part of the Constitution, of the old Constitution, it had that the old Constitution did not have that the Metropolitan was the sole ecclesiastical authority of the Archdiocese, and in order to even sign checks, he had to have the permission of the Archdiocese Board of Trustees. There were several clauses in there that stated, with the permission of the Archdiocese Board of Trustees. That did not sit well to all of us. It did not sit well with Metropolitan Philip, because he felt it hamstrung his ability to lead the archdiocese where he wanted it to go. Because on the committee there was two groups, the younger group and some members of the elders. And the elders wanted to maintain their oversight of this young metropolitan. When it came time to ratify the Constitution, article by article by article, this convention happened to be held in Chicago, where humbly yours started the church there in the 1960s. And that little group of us, to this day, I don't understand how we did it. That little group of us put on this convention. The L. Josephs, the Peter Zuvises, the Sam Sods, the whole small group put that mammoth convention on at the Hilton. And we changed the whole nature of conventions at that particular moment. But what's important for today? When the article came that stipulated in that line, with the permission of the Archdiocese Board of Trustees, L. Joseph slammed the table with his big hands. L. Joseph, who was in the automotive magazine business, moved from Toledo to Chicago and was one of our founders of our church there. He slammed the table. He said, "No, no, no. He is the ultimate authority in this archdiocese." The whole convention rose up. The whole convention rose up, yipping and applauding and so forth, and that stipulation was removed and taken down forever, so that the unquestionable authority of the Metropolitan Primate would govern the ruling principles of this archdiocese. That heretofore, where our church was influenced by the Protestant model of constitutions, at that moment it was forever changed to affirm the hierarchical nature of our church. That the Orthodox Church is a hierarchical body in which, as St. Ignatius of Antioch would say, where is the bishop, there is the church. And that became the fundamental governing principle of this archdiocese from that day on. And this is a very important historical note. Thank you, and God bless you.
God.